of Gita summarized by our dear Srila Prabhupada. Why it is named so? Contents of Gita summarized, because most of the concepts what Krishna is going to speak in Bhagavad Gita, everything is there in chapter 2, and later in subsequent chapters he is elaborating those concepts in greater details. But in brief, most of the concepts are there in chapter 2, so that's the reason it is named as contents of Gita summarized. So this is very important, essential and wonderful chapter. So I request all of you to attentively hear and contemplate on this meaning of the verses. Yesterday we had discussed up to verse 2.8. So let us have a quick recap of this verse 2.8. Sanamindriyanam avapya bhumav asapatnamruddham radhyam suranam apichadhipatyam. In the previous verse, Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, and here he is telling his problem. He is summarizing his problem statement. That I don't see any means by which I can remove this sorrow, which is drying my senses, even if I attain unrivaled kingdom. So that means he's telling that I don't see any means. Let's say I don't see that by fighting how it can remove my sorrow, and how it can relieve my present situation. And this sorrow is so intense that it is drying up my senses. Like in a heat summer, the pond is dried. In the same way, my senses are drying up. So I don't see how by fighting it will reinstate me in my natural position or normal position. Okay, so you may say, Krishna, that by fighting you will get kingdom. But what to speak of kingdom, if I will get also Swarga, which is an unrivaled kingdom, which is attained by the Devatas, even if I get that also, I don't see any means of removing this sorrow. So tell me something else. Tell me something else. So that means he is indirectly saying that tell me something else. If at all fighting, then tell me how it can remove my sorrows. Okay. Give me perfect knowledge. And here Srila Prabhupada is further explaining, who is eligible for spiritual master in his purport. So we had studied Kiva Vipra Kiva Nasi Sudra Keranaya. Ei Krishna Tattva Beta Sei Guru Hai. Only a Vaishnava can be a guru. Only a Vaishnava can be a guru. Because a Vaishnava is one who knows Krishna Tattva. Who doesn't know Krishna Tattva, he is not eligible to be called as a spiritual master or guru. So this is very essential point. Anyone can be very scholarly in many other branches of Vedas. Satkarma nirpuno vipro mantra tantra visaradaha avaishnava gururna syad vaishnava swapacho guru. Mantra tantra visarada. He can be very proficient in all these Vedic hymns and rituals. And he may be very expert in conducting the karmakandic rituals. But if he is a Vaishnava, that means if he is devoid of signs of Krishna consciousness, then he is not fit for Guru. But a Vaishnava, even if he is coming from a low caste or low one, Swapacho Guruhu, even if he is coming from the family of a dog eater means Chandala. Swa means dog. Swa means dog. So whoever is eating the dog meat also means from that family. Not literally that he is eating, but from this Chandala family, he might be from a Chandal family. But if he is aware and if he is expert in the science of Krishna consciousness, he is fit to be accepted as Guru. This is very important point we should know. Why? Because he can give perfect knowledge which can provide solution to our problems, to the problems of material existence. Inherent problem, which is common for everyone. What is that? Birth, old age, disease and death. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. And Adibhautik, Adidaivik and Adhyatmic kleshas, which cannot be driven away by accumulation of wealth or any economic development. How we accumulate wealth and do economic development? By our academic knowledge. By our academic knowledge and various other qualities which we acquired by our studies. Through this we accumulate wealth and economic development. But that is even not sufficient to drive away these problems or to solve these problems of material existence. So that means what is the use of that? So if economic development and material comforts could have been driven away these lamentations, then why Arjuna is speaking that this unrivaled kingdom on earth, even supremacy like that of demigod in heaven, that will not be sufficient to drive away my lamentations. So that means here certainly economic development and material comforts, yes, they can give us some comfort to us. So by which our mind will not be disturbed. Further, we can concentrate this on the lotus feet of the Lord. And we can contemplate on his Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. We can proceed further in the path of Krishna consciousness. They should be seen like that. So there is a proverb, right, in Hindi, means bhuka pet Krishna bhakti na, or something like that. Means bhuka pet mein Krishna bhakti karna difficult. So your stomach has to be full. So how you will fill your stomach? So that's the reason all these, whatever we are doing, job and all to get some money. So that has utility up to that point only, nothing more. And further he is telling Srila Prabhupada that economic development and supremacy that can be finished at any moment by the catastrophe of material nature, by any calamity. Suppose let's say you have made a big bungalow and then tsunami comes, immediately it crashes. So or by nature's arrangement, if let's say you might have accumulated a hell lot of wealth, but a very small disease, if somebody is inflicted, then the whole wealth can be also finished. And a father accumulated a lot of wealth, but his unworthy son might spend all of them in his bad habits. So I know in my village there was a Brahman family who has acres and acres and acres of lands. In just one generation, because of their unworthy sons, they have finished all the wealth. I have seen it in my eyes and heard also. So this is what to speak of, accumulation of this life. Even if you do some good karma and engage yourself in serving the poor, make donations, and basically do all the good deeds for which you can be praised in the society. So by that you can accumulate some punya. Those punyas also will be destroyed because khine punya martya lokam visanti. By accumulating this punya, someone can promote to the heavenly planets, but then by spending all of this punya, he can again come back to this earthly planet. So nothing you can store forever except Krishna consciousness, except bhakti, except your love for Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada here is giving the solution. If you want to curb your lamentation, then we have to take shelter of Krishna. Otherwise, there is no any other means. So here Arjuna is taking shelter of Krishna. And here you see a nice chart is there. If someone surrender to Guru, what he does? Basically, he is pretty much aligned with Krishna and his messages. And his messages are given in Bhagavad Gita and is demonstrated in Srimad Bhagavatam. So a spiritual master enlighten the disciple with this knowledge of Krishna, and that is able to dispel the doubts and lamentation and perplexities of the life. Whereas this wealth and economic development, they cannot solve the natural problems. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik, and Adi Daivik kleshas. And he who is fully versed with the science of Krishna consciousness, he is fit for a spiritual master. He is 100% bona fide for spiritual master. So one should need to surrender such spiritual master. Then only we will be able to resolve our problems or perplexities of life. So this is the essence of this verse what we read yesterday. Let us go to the next verse, 2.9. Sanjaya uvacha evamukta hృషికేశం గుడాకేశః parantapa nayotsya iti govindam ukva tushnim babubhaha. Please join along with me. We will recite Sanjaya uvacha eva mukva hృషికేశం
Mukta Rishikesam
Gudakesah Parantapaha
Gulakesa Parantapa
Nayotsya iti Govindam
Nayotasya iti Govindam
Uktva Tusnim Babuvaha.
Muktva Tusnim Vabhubha.
Sanjaya Uvacha
Sanjaya Uvacha
Eva Muktva Hృషికేశం
Eva Muktva Rishikesam
Gudakesah Parantapaha
Gudakesa Parantapa
Nayotsya iti Govindam
Najayati Govindam
Nayotsya iti Govindam
Nayostasya iti Govindam
Uktva Tusnim Babuvaha.
उक्त्वा तुष्टिं बभूव
Wonderful. Sanjaya Uvacha
जया उवाच
Evamukva Hrishikesang
एवमुक्त्वा ऋषिकेशं
Gudakesha Parantapaha
गुडाकेशा परं तप
Nayotsya iti Govindam
नायोतस्ते इति गोविन्दम्
Uktva Tusnim Babuvaha.
बभूवः
Wonderful, wonderful. Sanjaya Uvacha. Sanjaya is saying. What he is saying? Eva Muktva Rishikesan Gudakesha Parantapaha. Gudakesha. Who is Gudakesha? Gudakesha is Arjuna. Gudakesha means what? Gudaka Isa. Gudaka means sleep or ignorance. Isaha means the controller. Who is the controller of the sleep and ignorances? He is called Gudakesha. And another meaning also we had given Guda, Ka, and Isha. Guda means sweetness, Ka means Brahma, Isha means Shiva. So who gives sweetness to Brahma and Shiva? He is Gudakesha. So how he is giving sweetness? Because of his, means through his interactions, through his wonderful interaction with Krishna, he gives pleasure to Brahma and Shiva. But here the meaning is Gudakesha, who is the conqueror of the sleep. Rishikesha, who is Rishikesha? Rishikesha is Krishna. Rishikesha means, Rishika means the senses. Senses. Isha means controller. Who is the controller of everyone's senses? He is called Rishikesha. So, Eva Muktva Rishikesang, okay, by means telling this to Rishikesha, who? Gudakesha, Arjuna. Who is he? He is Parantapa. He is the chastiser of enemies. He is the subduer of enemies. Parantapa. He is very powerful. Na yotsya iti govindam. What Arjuna is speaking? Arjuna is telling that na yotsya iti. I will not fight. Oh Govinda, I will not fight. Uktva tusnim babu vaha, and remain silent. Tusnim. Synonyms. Sanjaya Uvacha. Sanjaya said, Eva Muktva, thus speaking, Rishikesam unto Krishna, the master of the senses, Gudakesha, Arjuna, the master of curbing ignorance, Parantapaha, the chastiser of the enemies, Na Yotse, I shall not fight, Iti, thus, Govindam unto Krishna, the giver of pleasure to the senses, Uttva says, Tusnim, silent, Babubaha became Ha certainly. Now, Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Hrishikesha and Govinda. So he's telling, oh my dear Krishna, you are the master of the senses. And you are the person who gives pleasure to the senses. But now you see, my senses are drying off. I am burning internally and externally as well. So he is very hopeful now. And now he has surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna will definitely drive away this burning sensation and give pleasure to Arjuna. So this is his hope. Translation. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. And you see here Sanjaya is telling this to Dhritarashtra. And what has just happened. So in the first chapter, Arjuna has sat down in the chariot with deep lamentation and grief. In the second chapter, up to now, also he's restating his further points, and at last told Krishna that I shall not fight. Hearing this, Dhritarashtra became very joyful. Oh, now whatever I was hoping, it is going to be true. Arjuna is now decided not to fight, and my sons will get the kingdom. Oh, it's such a joyous moment, such a joyful moment. But knowing this, immediately Sanjaya is counteracting to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra must have been very glad to understand that Arjuna was not going to fight and was instead leaving the battlefield for the begging profession. But Sanjaya disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemies. He is addressing Arjuna here as Parantapaha. Oh, Dhritarashtra, don't forget. Arjuna is very competent to kill his enemies. Parantapaha. Although Arjuna was for the time being overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he now surrender unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. This indicated that he would soon be free from false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness and would then surely fight. Don't be so joyful. Don't be so hopeful. Movie is not stopped. It is now a turning point. It is in perfect climax situation. So Arjuna has now surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna will now enlighten him and give him the knowledge of self-realization, and by that Arjuna will surely change his mind and engage in fighting. So in that way, Sanjaya is disappointing Dhritarashtra. Thus, Dhritarashtra's joy would be frustrated since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. And another meaning here, you see, Acharyas have given Arjuna addressed Krishna as Govinda, who gives pleasure to the senses of his devotees. There in the first chapter, when Arjuna spoke, O Krishna, Sheneor Uvayor Madhye Ratham Stapayam Achyuta. O Achyuta, can you please take the chariot to the middle of both army so that I can see whoever has come here to fight along with me? Krishna immediately, oh yes sir, here. And he dragged the chariot to the desired place. Seneyor Uvayor Madhye Stapayitva Rathotamam. O Arjuna, Pashya, Bhisma Drona Pramukhatah. You see here, Krishna is telling that you see here Bhisma and Drona. So he has obeyed the order of his, okay. At this situation, Arjuna is master because Krishna is acting as his charioteer driver. So he is obeying the order of his master. And now again, Arjuna is surrender to Krishna and accept him as his spiritual master. Now Krishna will reverse his role and Krishna will now instruct Arjuna. So he take the role as per the desire of his devotees. Actually, he is Hirshikesha. He is the controller of everybody's senses. But because of his bhakta vatshalya, because of his love towards his devotees, he sometimes is controlled by the devotee. And when devotee is completely surrendered to him, then he also control his devotees. Sometimes he is controlled by devotee, and sometimes he is controlling the devotee. But depending upon the mood of his devotees. Let's go to the next verse. Oh, sorry, now time is up. So we are stopping here. So tomorrow we will go to verse 2.10. Thank you all very much for your enthusiastic participation. I am very grateful to you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna. Have a nice day.